Hi friends, this is Caly Person for Simon Says Stamp. Welcome back for another STAMPtember 2025 exclusive collaboration reveal. Today's sponsor is Memory Box, and we have the Good Cheer set, and it's an adorable set with 2 large penguin images, as well as a really cute snowman and some other accessory images that will help you build a scene. Of course, there are also coordinating dies, so if you're interested, be sure to grab this full set before it sells out. The STAMPtember exclusive is sold in a limited quantity and will not be restocked once it sells out. If it does, I hope this card will give you some great ideas for a future card using a similar stamp set that you might have, or a technique or a color combination that you may want to try. I'm using VersaClear ink here to stamp my images, and then I'm going to emboss that to make this ink Copic friendly. I'm just trapping that ink under some clear embossing, and that makes it safe for alcohol markers. After embossing these images, I'm going to go back and stamp a few more trees so that I can make my background look fuller with additional trees. I'm going to start by coloring these pine trees since there's more of them than there are with the penguin and the one snowman, and I'm going to do that by flooding first with a light marker. Now I want to create lots of texture on these trees to create interest and textures in the background, so I'm going to do some flicking. And the reason why I started with a lighter color when I normally start with the darkest colors, because when I flick over these already flicked areas with another color, it softens up the initial flicks. So I find that when I want to flick pine trees this way, it's easiest to start off with the lightest color, then go in with the darkest color to add those flicks. When you add in that medium color, it does soften those initial flicks a little bit, which is fine, but if I go over that again with the lightest color, then it softens too much. Then I have to go back in with the darkest color and flick again. So I find that method to be the easiest for me. Then moving on to the penguin scarf, I'm just going to add some bright pink to make this really cheerful, and then some simple oranges for the beaks, the penguin's feet, and the snowman's carrot nose. And then I'm going to add a little bit of warm gray tones to the penguin's white areas. I never leave anything fully white on an image. You want to add some shading so it makes the coloring a little bit more interesting. And then I'm going to use some R30 for the cheeks and then dot them again with some R22. Then I'll add some of this soft teal to the snowman. Again, I want to cast that snow from the ground and the light from the sky onto the snowman. So there's always some color. Things aren't always stark white. So that's my Copic tip. Don't leave anything white. So I am going to color the scarf and the hat here to match on the snowman, and I'm going to use a bluish purple. Again, just wanting to introduce some pops of color onto these images for the card to create more interest. I'm using 3 markers here on the scarf and the top portion of the hat, and for the pom-pom and the cuff of the hat, I'm going to use the 2 lighter colors just so they can offer a tad bit of differentiation between the different materials and dimensions on this hat. Once I'm done coloring off camera, I'm going to die cut the penguin, the snowman, and my trees. Then I'll set those aside so we can work on a background. And for the background, I wanted lots of texture and snowflakes. So I am using the Simon Says Stamp Snowflake Visions embossing folder. I like the snowflake embossing folder because it's got lots of snowflakes in the background and they kind of like overlap each other with that texture. And so I'm going to ink blend this with some really cheerful colors, and I'm going to blend from a yellow to a pinkish purple. I'm going to start with the yellow towards the bottom here where I am going to start my scene. I'm not going all the way to the bottom of the card. And then I'll blend in with this cheeky color. It's a great blend between yellow and pink, so it's kind of a coral color, and I'll go back and forth between the yellow and that cheeky until I'm happy. Then I'll go in with the taffy color. I love this taffy color. It kind of reminds me of Seedless Preserves from the Distress ink line, and it's a great color to blend with pink. So I've gone between the taffy and the cheeky until I'm happy, going in circular motions clockwise and counterclockwise to get a good blend on this textured background. Now I want to create a hillside, so I am using this hill die from the Simon Says Stamp Stitch Slopes and Hills set, and I'm going to mark the 2 sides so that I can get an even cut. So I've marked each side at 1.5 inches, then I'll line it up and then tape it down before running it through my die cutting machine. This will ensure that I have an even hillside on each side of my card panel. And then I'll lightly ink blend that with some seafoam ink here. Again, I don't leave anything white. I just want to make sure that that illusion of color is there. So it's just a really soft blend. You don't even have to add a whole lot of color, but details. So I've added that to my embossed background with some thin 3D foam squares. Then I'll attach my two main images to the center to create a focal point. I'm using some additional 3D foam squares at the top there and some additional glue at the bottom to attach it to the hillside so that the heads on these characters will match with the height of the rest of the card and the hillside. Now, using these little pine trees, they are short little pine trees, but to create more height to them, I'm going to add them so that it looks like they're staggered and there's some taller trees in the back and some shorter trees in the front. Again, using some 3D foam squares to give them a little bit of dimension. And as you can see, that flicking and the way you color it really gives it some depth and dimension. Now to add some snow to the entire panel, I'm going to use some white splatter medium and I'm going to tap that paint onto my card panel until I'm happy with how it looks. So it looks like there's some snow on the penguin and snowman as well. Next, I'm going to work on the sentiment and I'm going to add some color to the sentiment. So we're going to stamp it with the colored inks that I used for the background. I'm using some cheeky ink here for the initial stamp and I'm going to cover the entire thing in this color. And then I'll go in with my little sponge applicator here and add taffy to the top and going over the wishes part of the sentiment just a little bit. Then I'll stamp it again with taffy at just the top of the word winter. That way you get a nice gradient of color going from that dark pink to that coral color. I'm going to use the coordinating dies to die cut that sentiment. And once I decide where I want that sentiment to go, I can cut down this panel if I feel like it's not balanced enough. So I cut off a 1/2 inch off of the snow at the bottom, and then I'm going to cut off a 1/4 inch off the sides, trying to keep it as even as possible. And I decided to put this sentiment at the bottom top hand corner on the right there. And then that balances everything a little bit more. There's not too much white space down at the bottom there where the snow is. Then I'll add this to a card base and that finishes my card. So I hope you enjoyed this project. I hope it gives you lots of inspiration for a winter card using the Memory Box Good Cheer STAMPtember set for 2025. If you're interested in any of the products that I used today, be sure to check out the links below. Thanks so much for watching and have a great day. Bye everyone.